What's shaking, guys? MagicActivatr here, coach of the Memphis Drizzlies, bringing you guys a draft recap / analysis for our Season 3 GBA D-League team. So today I'm going to be going over all the mons that I picked, why I picked what I did, and all of that good stuff. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button down below. Give it your magic touch because your support is always greatly appreciated. But before I get into my actual picks, I thought I'd give you a kind of a glimpse into what my draft plan was going in. So there were kind of two factors at play here. The first was that, generally speaking, whenever I do a draft like this, I don't like to plan to draft anything too specifically. So I never think like, oh, there's this specific Pokemon that I want to pick up in the draft, or there's that specific Pokemon. For me, what I typically like to do is be a lot more flexible. And so I tend to kind of plan out what roles that I know I want to have to fit my play style, and generally there's like, you know, a list of several Pokemon that could potentially fit those roles. And then I start off, I try to pick something that feels like a priority, and then I continue to fill in those roles based on, you know, what's still around, when would be the best time to pick this particular thing up if it's still available. And there's a lot more flexibility in that, and generally speaking, it makes you feel like you're less likely to get sniped because you never have anything too specific in mind, or at least that's the way that I go about it. And I've had success with that in the past, so I figured, you know what, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's kind of roll with that. But there was also this other factor that played into the plan, and that was I wanted to draft things with familiarity to me. And the main reason for that was looking at all the other coaches involved in the D-League this season. I realized pretty quickly I am probably the least experienced of the battlers as far as competitive goes. I mean, I've done quite a bit of competitive battling. I'm no complete newbie to it by any means, but looking at all the other coaches, most of them have a lot more experience with draft leagues and just competitive battling in general, especially with the 7th gen meta, because I've only recently started kind of dabbling in the 7th gen competitive scene. So these guys have a lot more experience under their belt, and so in order for me to be able to put up a good fight, I felt like it was in my best interest strategically to try and draft things that either I had used before or I had a lot of experience with in just competitive in general. So I wanted to be able to know how to use the mons that I was drafting. So you're not going to see a whole lot of 7th gen mons in this draft because a lot of them are still kind of new to me as far as what they can do and whatnot, but you'll see a couple, and you're going to be seeing a lot of familiar faces in this draft if you followed me during the IBL Season 1. So that's kind of everything going down there. So going into the draft itself, we actually had the 3rd overall pick, which was both pretty exciting and also a little bit intimidating because there was such a huge pool of Pokemon to pick from. And obviously it was a snake style draft, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with and know how that works. So I knew that we had to pick something really good up front because it's going to be a while before it got back down to us. So I really wanted to, like I said, pick something that I was familiar with and knew how to use, and also something that was a worthy 1st round pick, something that I knew could function really well, particularly in OU. And so there were really 2 Pokemon that I had in mind. Technically, I guess there were 3 because I actually considered picking up Magearna if it made it 3 picks, because that thing is a monster. I haven't used it myself, but I've experienced it a few times, and it's pretty ferocious. So I probably would have picked that up if it would have made it to me, but it didn't, and I didn't expect it to. So there were really 2 mons that I had in mind. One was Landorus Therian, and the other was Jirachi. And both of these were mons that, like I said, I've used them a good bit, so I knew kind of how to use them, what they could do as far as what roles they could fill. And I also knew that they functioned pretty darn well in 7th gen competitive because I've used them myself in what little bit of 7th gen I've played. So it really kind of came down to me with what felt like it would fulfill the most, would be the most useful and the most versatile for my playstyle. And so I decided to go ahead and pick up Landorus T, because Landorus T is just a great Pokemon, and it really fills a lot of roles. Like, first of all, it gives us an electric community right out of the gate, because you don't want to let anybody Volt Switch spam on you because that is not fun at all. It also gives us a ground immunity with its flying typing, which is really, really awesome to have 2 immunities in one Pokemon. It's only got 2 weaknesses in water, and then it's 4 times weakness to ice, which is pretty easily patched up with a bulky water type. But, I mean, honestly, Landorus is just a great all-around Pokemon. It's offensively, it's a huge threat with powerful stab earthquakes. Stone Edges hit really hard. It has double dance ability with Rock Polish and Swords Dance, so you can really customize it and set it up either way that you want, depending on what your opponent has on a particular week. Like, do you want speed? Rock Polish. If you want more offense, give it that Swords Dance, which is really nice. It also gave me a Rocker, which is really nice, a Stealth Rock user right out of the gate. And probably one of my favorite things about this Pokemon is that it has U-Turn and Intimidate. And Intimidate is a great ability. I love Intimidate. And coupled with U-Turn, it's probably one of my favorite things in the game because you're able to, you know, if you want to Scarf Landorus, you can come in, Intimidate something, U-Turn out, get some chip damage, and then go into something else. And it's a really, really nice pivot. Also being able to drop the attack of the opposing Pokemon. And it just works really, really well. Also, Intimidate allows Landorus to be a very, very effective defensive mon, so you can run him physically defensive and eat hits really, really well. And I just thought this was a really solid first round pickup. It's got a lot of options. It can knock off as well. I didn't mention that, but just a solid all-around Pokemon. I'm sure I'll be forgetting things about some of these Pokemon that I wanted to talk about as I go through, but that was our first round pick, Landorus T. I feel like it was the best pick that I could have personally made, so I'm very, very happy with that. So second round, we were waiting for things to come back around, and there were actually 3 mons. I said I don't like to really plan too specifically about picking mons, but there were 3 mons in particular that if I had the chance to pick them up, I knew I wanted to. And coming up on this second round, there were only, I think, 2 Mega Evolutions that had been picked up so far. I think Mega Lopunny and Mega Kangaskhan, which is actually allowed because a Parental Bond got nerfed. But coming back, I was like, you know, there's a Mega Evolution that I really, really want to grab if it's still here, and nobody's picking up Mega Evolutions hardly. So, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pick this up here. I think it's totally worth it. And so second round, I picked up Mega Venusaur. Our boy Summer Breeze is making the return to the Memphis Drizzlies. Probably a fan favorite Pokemon that I've used in Draft League before. Mega Venusaur is absolutely great. I love it. It's probably my favorite Mega Evolution, to be honest. And this thing is just incredibly good. Talk about a bulky, tanky mon. This mon sits there and eats hits for days. It's massive defensive stats, massive special defensive stat. Really allows you to customize it and make it whichever way you want it. It can be specially defensive, it can be physically defensive, and this thing is really good at eating hits and staying around. It's got Giga Drain, Synthesis, Leech Seed that all really help it to just stay healthy and be able to continue to eat hits. And even though it is a bulkier mon, it does do a really good job of hitting mons offensively as well. Like Giga Drain and Sludge Bomb hit really, really hard, surprisingly. Like even if you don't make it offensive, they still do quite a bit of work. And not to mention the stuff that it gets on the physical side as well. You can run Leaf Tornado, Power Whip, it gets Earthquake, Knockoff, things like that, which is all really, really nice. It even gets Swords Dance, so if you wanted to be that guy and, you know, run a Swords Dance Mega Venusaur, then that's totally an option. And, you know, it might happen this season. We'll see what happens, but it's great. It also gets Sleep Powder, Roar for some support and stuff like that, so it's just really, really nice all around. It doesn't necessarily synergize super well with Landorus. It does cover that water weakness, but we're going to actually patch up that hole in the next pick. And since it was, like I said, Snake Style, and we were coming back, there were only 4 picks between Mega Venusaur and our next pick, and I went ahead and scooped up the second mon that I really, really wanted to make sure I got in this draft, and that was the bulky Watermon Milotic. And oh my goodness, I love, love, love Milotic. One of, if not the best, bulky water in the game, IMO. I love this Pokemon so much, and with picking it up right after Mega Venusaur gives us 2 parts of a Fire Water Grass Core right out of the gate. We've got some serious defensive power between Landorus, Venusaur, and Milotic right now. And Milotic, like I said, just a great bulky water type. It gets a great ability in Marvel Scale, and competitive's decent as well. I haven't found as many uses for that in draft in the past, but Milotic with Marvel Scale is really great because normally with a bulky mon, the way that you wear it down is you toxic it or burn it or something like that. And if you do that to Milotic, it just gets stronger basically because it gets that boost from Marvel Scale to its defenses, which is really nice. It can be a little bit one-dimensional to some extent because pretty much you can expect those first 3 moves to usually be Scald, Ice Beam, and Recover, because that's kind of the standard thing. But as far as that 4th move goes, Milotic has some decent options there. It has Haze, it has Dragon Tail, so the ability to keep mons from setting up too much. It has Psych Up, so if a mon wants to set up on the special side, you can steal that and actually take advantage of that, which is really nice. It also gets things like Mirror Coat, which is really cool and can really catch things off guard, which is nice. And of course, Toxic is there to help with stalling and everything like that. And like I said, Marvel Scale coupled with Scald just makes this thing a really good defensive mon, and obviously its defensive stats are great anyway. So I love Milotic. Anytime I get a chance to pick it up, I love to use it. So very happy with those first 3 mons. So we had to wait a while coming back around, and originally for the 4th pick, I was planning to pick up that 3rd mon that I really wanted to grab, but when I got back, I realized that there were actually, we already had 2 parts of a Fire Water Grass Core, and there were actually several solid options for fire types left, and I was like, you know what? We can probably wait because we're coming up on the wheel pick again. I can probably wait 1 more round to pick up this other mon. So let's go ahead and patch up with the fire type here. And there were some good fire types available. Heatran was there, Victini was still there, Entei was still there. But I had to go with a mon that I've used before and wasn't planning to even pick up in this draft, but since it was there, I had to scoop it up. And that Pokemon was Arcanine. And I absolutely adore Arcanine. It is super nice, and being able to be both offensive and defensive is a really nice thing. It also kind of helps us out because with those first few picks we didn't really draft a whole lot of speed, so Arcanine having base 95 speed, which is pretty good, but the fact that it has extreme speed actually makes that a whole lot better. It gives us another Intimidate user, which is really nice because now we have that ability to Intimidate Shuffle if we want, which is can be a real problem for some of those teams that are a little bit more heavily towards the physically offensive side. And of course, Will-O-Wisp is there for support. It does have Flash Fire as an option as well, granting us some fire immunity. And like I said, this thing is just really great. It has a solid amount of coverage from the physical side. It gets of course, Flare Blitz, it gets Wild Charge, it gets Crunch, it gets Drill Run, or not Drill Run, Bulldoze, it gets Outrage, Crunch, I don't know what all else it gets there, but, or what I've already named, but just a lot of moves. And what's cool about it is it can even be work pretty effectively as like a special attacker or a mixed attacker, which is really nice. And I think what I really like the most about Arcanine though is the fact that, like I said, it does have that ability to kind of play a physical or play an offensive role or a defensive role depending on what we need, and that is really nice. And it also, like I said, this Firewater Grass Core is one that I've used before, and it is a monster to deal with. It can be a real pain, and the fact that all 3 of them have Recovery, Venusaur with Synthesis, Milotic with Recover, Arcanine with Morning Sun, like, these mons are pretty good at staying around and causing problems for the opponent. So I was really happy with being able to get Arcanine in round 4. So we had to wait 4 more picks, and coming back around this round, I knew I had to go ahead and draft this other mon that I wanted, because we've already drafted several mons that are a lot more towards the bulky side, not necessarily fast, and I knew I needed something that was going to be fast. And what is faster than my boy Jolteon? I absolutely adore Jolteon. I think it gets a little bit of flack sometimes because it's seen as being a little bit one-dimensional, but every time that I've used Jolteon in the past, especially in Draft League, it has done nothing but the finest. It has been, in fact, I think in IBL Season 1, it was probably my MVP overall for the season. It was just so good. Honestly think Jolteon is vastly underrated. And talk about a fast mon. Base 130 speed, this thing is one of the fastest mons that you're going to see in this draft. There's a few things that that can beat it out, like Mega Lopunny and Mega Aerodactyl and stuff like that, but Jolteon, just in general, one of the fastest mon. It naturally outspeeds so many things. Fast Volt Switcher. It can be a little bit one-directional on moves, I guess, because typically, you know, Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, you know, maybe Shadow Ball and a Hidden Power, something like that. But what's really, really nice about Jolteon, one of the things that I love about it is it gives us a Volt Absorber, which means another electric immunity, which is really, really cool. It can switch in. It actually gives it a chance to recover up. And it also gets Quick Feet. And I actually really, really love Quick Feet as an ability, especially on Jolteon being such a fast mon already. Throw a Flame Orb on this thing, especially after Burn has been nerfed this generation. And now you've got a choice Scarfed Jolteon that can switch between moves. And to me, that is a devastating combination. Because, you know, somebody can switch in on a predicted Volt Switch with a ground type, and you can be there to hit them with like an HP Ice or something like that, because you have the ability to switch up and stuff. So it's just really, really nice. And I'm not going to count out the fact that, you know, Jolteon does have some other moves at its disposal. You know, we could just set up agilities if we wanted. Unfortunately, we can't baton pass them in this league like I did in the IBL, but that's fine. But we can wish if we want to. I mean, I don't know how often you see wish Jolteon, but that is an option. It can set up subs and baton pass out. Like, Jolteon is I think, a better Pokemon than people normally give it credit for, and it is, I think, a clutch pickup. I would pick it up if it were a tier 2, to be honest. I think it's good, but anyway, you can feel free to disagree with that. But anyway, Jolteon, really, really nice fit as a team, and it really just meshes well and synergizes with everything else that we picked so far. So, moving on, I've kind of picked all the things that I really, really wanted to make sure that I had on the team as far as getting those 3 mons I really, really wanted, and also rounded out a pretty nice defensive core with a little bit of offense. So what I really wanted to do in the next pick was to get something that was going to add some speed to the team, and it was also going to add some really good offensive pressure. And so looking at my team, I was trying to decide on who to go for, and actually our friend Celeste, the commissioner of the IBL, mentioned the Pokemon Tana. And I'm going to be honest, going into the draft, I was kind of like, if I can avoid picking an Ultra Beast, I'd really like to do that because I'm not a huge fan of Ultra Beast. But when I was looking at Tana, the fact that, you know, Grass and Steel was kind of a nice typing, similar to Bug Fighting with just that extra weakness to, or Bug Steel, similar to Bug Steel with that extra weakness to fighting. That's what I meant to say. And it had base 109 speed. It was really fast. It had a base, I think it's like 180, 181 attack. Like, this thing is monstrous, and with Beast Boost, it can hit incredibly hard. And although all of its moves aren't super powerful, I think like the best thing is like base 90 and power. With a 180 or 181 stat, like attack stat, like it doesn't really matter. Like, this thing is gonna hit hard, and if you can get Beast Boost stacked on top of that, that is really, really nice. Now, it has a lot to be desired on the special side, because the special defense and special attack are pretty garbage, but its physical attack, its physical defense even, is crazy good, and its speed is solid at base 109. It allows me, kind of helps with my speed tiers just a little bit. And one of the things that I didn't realize initially when I drafted this that is really nice is it also gave me a defog user, which is really, really cool. I actually didn't realize it got defog until after I picked it, and I was like, oh, that's actually really fortunate, because I hadn't had any kind of hazard removal on the team quite yet. So I'm honestly very excited to use Tana. I think, like, initially I was like, I don't know about this thing, but the more I looked at it, the more I'm like, I think this thing could be a lot of fun to play with. So I'm excited to have Tana and try it out. But going into the next pick, even though we just technically got Tana that has defog, I did want another form of hazard removal, because in the past with my drafts, I've tended to not do the best job of any kind of hazard control. I'll usually get mons that can set up hazards, but not really have great options for removing them. So usually I end up drafting like a magic bounce user to kind of apply some pressure there. But since I really wasn't planning to go that direction this time, I knew I definitely wanted to try and get a rapid spinner. And there was one rapid spinner in particular that I really wanted to try and use because I've actually used it a little bit in 7th gen OU, mixed OU, and have had a lot of success with it. And I don't know, I've had a lot of people tell me that it's not very good in draft format, but you know, it's something that I've actually used before. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to try it out. We'll see what happens. It might not be the best, but I really like this Pokemon, and I've had great success using it in OU paired with some of these Pokemon that I've drafted, like Landorus and Venusaur. It's worked really well with them. And that Pokemon is Kamala. And I don't know, man. I love Kamala. I think it's absolutely great. Comatose is an incredible, incredible ability. It allows it to basically switch in on like moves that would normally cause poison, burn, paralysis, stuff like that. And because it's in essentially a perpetual state of sleep, it can't be statused by anything, which is really, really cool. And it's nice because, you know, with rapid spin, one of the things that you might be potentially spinning away is toxic spikes. So being able to switch in, obviously we have Venusaur that can switch in and remove the spikes, but having Kamala who can switch in and rapid spin those away is super nice. And I mean, Kamala stat wise, it has a lot to be desired as far as physical defense goes and speed goes and stuff like that. But this dude has a solid attack stat. I think it's base 115, and if I'm misquoting any of these stats, I apologize, but I think it's 115 attack or something like that, which is pretty solid, especially with its move pool. It gets access to Return, it gets access to Earthquake, it gets access to Sucker Punch, U-Turn. Like, honestly, this thing is really good, and I've had a lot of success using it as an Assault Vest set, which is probably my favorite set to use with it, honestly. Yeah, I don't know. I love this thing. And with its special defense stat being pretty solid, it does make a pretty good, especially defensive Pokemon, or can eat specially offensive hits, is what I'm trying to say. Wow, I am fumbling over my words so much right now. But anyway, yeah, Kamala. I love this thing. Like I said, I've had success using it in mixed OU. It might not be quite as good in draft format when people can counter pick you, but you know what? We're gonna try it out, see what happens. It's one of my favorite 7th gen mons, so I'm glad to have it on the team. But anyway, going into I believe this is the like 8th round. 8th round. Yeah, there we go. At this point, I was kind of like trying to figure out, okay, what really do I need at this point? And I had been looking at a couple of psychic types. I considered picking up Espeon actually, just for the magic bounce to potentially take some pressure off. I also was looking at Azelf because of the fact that, you know, it's kind of nice. It can set up screens, it has levitate, things like that. And my friend Dan actually mentioned, you know what, if you haven't picked a fairy type, you should probably pick that up. And I was like, you know what, that is a good call. I haven't picked up a fairy type yet. And I was looking at what fairies were available. And as I was going through, I was looking in the tier 3, and I saw a Pokemon that I haven't used a whole lot, to be honest, but every time that I see it picked up in a draft, I'm like, yo, why didn't I think to try and pick this thing up? And since it was there, I decided to go ahead and pick up Gardevoir. And now Gardevoir is not particularly a speedy mon. It's only base 80, which isn't all that great. But what I really like about this mon is, one, it hits like a monster. It has a base 125, I believe, special attack stat, which is pretty insane. Like that's close to Espeon status. Like that's pretty hard hitting. And its special defense stat too is really, really good. Now its physical defense has a lot to be desired, but Gardevoir is a monster that is able to eat up special hits and dish them out as well. And with its coverage, it's really, really great. Stab Psychic, Stab Moonblast is really, really nice. And Moonblast being pretty spammable, like you can use it and pretty much get some damage off on anything, is really nice. It also gets really solid coverage as well, because obviously it gets things like Shadow Ball, it gets things like Energy Ball, it gets things like Thunderbolt, you know, a lot of good stuff. But one of the things that I think really sold me on grabbing Gardevoir, besides that special attack and special defense stat, is the fact that this thing has a really solid support move pool. Like, this thing is really, really nice. It gets things like Will-O-Wisp, Thunder Wave for some status support. It gets Wish, it gets Heal Bell, which is really nice. And one of the moves that I absolutely love that it gets is Healing Wish. So being able to actually sacrifice Gardevoir to fully restore and recover one of our other mons gives this thing a lot of potential as a utility slash cleric mon for our team, which is really nice. And being able to wish pass to some of those mons that can't really take care of their health themselves is really, really cool. So I personally think Psychic and Fairy is one of the best combinations as far as like a typing to pair with Fairy is. I think Water Fairy is a great combination, and I think Psychic Fairy is probably my second favorite Fairy combination. So I'm really excited to use Gardevoir. Like I said, haven't really used it that much before, but I think it can definitely put in some good work. So going into the 9th round, something that I had yet to pick up that I did want to fill out on my team was I wanted a fighting type, because I don't know, fighting types aren't really a necessity for a team, but I really like to have them just because of the fact that they do resist Stealth Rock on switching and stuff. And generally they hit really, really hard from the physical side. So I was looking through, and of course my speed isn't the best right now. I mean, we've got Tana and Jolteon kind of carrying our speed tiers right now. And I saw that a mon that I really, really love, in fact, probably one of my favorite fighting types in the game, was still available. And that Pokemon was Shou. So I scooped up Shou from tier 3, and I love Shou. This thing hits really, really hard. I think it's 125 physical attack. It's got a 105 base speed, which is really, really nice, because not a whole lot of fighting types really get up to that 100 plus speed tier. So it's really nice to have one of the fastest fighting types in the game. Obviously, there are a few things faster than it, but 105 is definitely nothing to mock, and especially since Shou is such a great choice scarf user, and it gets two great abilities. In one, it gets Reckless, which means that if this thing uses high jump kick, it is going to destroy lives. Like, it is going to do so much damage. But probably my favorite ability that it gets, and one of my favorite abilities in the game in general, is Regenerator, which means anytime this mon switches out, it's going to restore a third of its health, which is really, really cool, because even though this is a mon that is pretty frail as far as defenses go, and doesn't take a whole lot of hits, the fact that it can that it's so offensive and yet can come out and still recover up some of his health is super nice. So you can couple that with Life Orb and negate some of that recoil and just make this Pokemon last longer. Like I said, scarfing this thing is really cool, because you turning out and just getting Regenerator health is nice. It resists Stealth Rock, like I said, but even stuff like Spikes, coming in and taking that damage, anytime you switch out, you can get that, you can restore that back, which is really, really cool. And honestly, Shou has a solid amount of coverage, I would say. Like, it gets access to Knock Off, it can Poison Jab, U-Turn is nice, it can Fake Out, and even though it's not necessarily the widest move pool, it is really, really good. It can even, you know, we could run Acrobatics if we wanted, you know, something like that could be fun. And honestly, this thing could potentially function. It does get access to Calm Mind and stuff, so we could potentially make it function as a special attacker just to throw some people off, which is really, really cool. So I love Shou, one of my favorite fighting types. Glad to have picked it up. I think it was a great, great late round pickup. Going into the 10th round, though, really the only things that we had left to pick on our team was we had to pick a required tier 5. We hadn't done that yet. And then we had one free pick left, and with our points, we could either pick up a tier 4 or a tier 5. So I went ahead and looked through tier 4 and saw a Pokemon that kind of stuck out to me as a potentially really good late round pickup, and that Pokemon was Miss Mei Deus. So here's the thing: is I I really like Miss Magius. Now, it's got 105 in its speed, special attack, and special defense, which makes it pretty fast and pretty solid hitting Mon. The drawback, of course, is that it does have like I think 60 in all of its other stats, which is kind of garbage because this thing cannot take a physical hit to save its life, and that's kind of troublesome when dark type is namely physical. So that could be a bit problematic, but honestly, Miss Magius is really cool. Having a levitate user to add another ground immunity to our team felt really nice. We didn't have any other Mons on our team weak to dark, which made it a lot more appealing as well. It gives us a spin blocker, which isn't a role that I particularly feel is necessary in a draft, but having that as an option is nice. And I think the cool thing about Miss Magius, though, is, like I said, that 105 speed makes it pretty fast. It makes it a pretty fast taunt user. It can Will-O-Wisp things. Thunder Wave, being a fast Thunder Wave user could be really nice, especially with our team not particularly being the fastest. That could be a really nice support thing. And Miss Magius gets some solid coverage as well. I like to think of Miss Magius, honestly, as like a lower class Gengar, like more of a discount Gengar than anything. Like, it gets solid coverage and can hit pretty decently. Its stats just aren't quite as good as Gengar, and it might even be a little bit better than Gengar in some ways because Gengar lost Levitate. But either way, I don't know. I think this is really good, and I think it also has a lot of potential to be a wall breaker if we can, you know, set up a nasty plot because of that solid coverage that it has. A nasty plot Miss Magius would be so great. I would love a chance to pull that off sometime during the season, but yeah, it's a Mon that can sometimes be a little bit hard. I actually picked this up in the IBL as a free agent in Season 1 and only found one chance to use it because for some reason the IBL had crazy amounts of Pursuit users running around, which was kind of terrifying. But yo, I think we can definitely have some fun with Miss Magius this season, so I'm excited to have it. So going into the last round pick, the only thing that we have left is our required Tier 5, and by this point, anything that I was really interested in Tier 5 had already been picked up. There wasn't a whole lot there that really appealed to me. It mostly came down to a decision of like, what is the bug type that hinders my team the least? And so I was looking around, and there were kind of two Mons that I was looking at because I realized I only had one Stealth Rocker. Somehow I managed to only pick up one Stealth Rocker this entire draft, which normally doesn't happen. You usually have several options, but there were two Hazard Setters that I was looking at. One was Crustle, which is a Mon that I enjoy using, and the other one was Armaldo. Both of them share Bug and Rock typing, or as I think the GBA Twitter said, Bug Water. Or Rock Water. No, it was Rock Water. That's what it said. No, it's Bug Rock is its typing. But honestly, looking at Armaldo, I thought it just kind of fit the team a little bit better. It gives a Stealth Rock, another Stealth Rock user. It also has the ability to Rapid Spin. I don't know that I would designate it as a Rapid Spinner because it obviously takes super effective damage from rocks, which is kind of nasty. But honestly, this thing is pretty solid because it has a really nice attack stat. I think it's base 120. So it can hit pretty hard. It gets access to Swords Dance and Rock Polish, I believe. So double dance as well. And its coverage is not bad. It has some nice utility with Earthquake, Stone Edge, X Scissor, Knock Off. I think it gets Cross Poison, which is nice. Aqua Tail is a thing. It gets priority with Aqua Jet, which is, you know, it's a plus to have another form of priority on the team. Like, I'm not going to complain about that. And yeah, I think this thing could honestly function pretty well on our team. It gets I think it's Battle Armor and Swift Swim. So honestly, there is potential. I know we didn't really draft a weather team, but there is some potential with our team to possibly run Rain some week and run like Swift Swim Armaldo and do some work, because honestly we got several Mons that could function pretty well. Jolteon with Thunder, and we got several Mons that could run Thunder actually, and then Milotic of course benefiting with Scald in the rain and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's a possibility. Let's not count it out, you know. It is an option, but that is going to round out the draft itself. And now there's one last thing that I do want to cover, which is something that is new to the GBA D-League this season, and that is the new ZMove system. So obviously now we have Z-moves as a thing. I think in the past they had like a designated Z captain that they picked, like just one Z-Mon user. But this time around, at the end of the draft, each coach has a set amount of points known as a Z budget, which they can then use to upgrade any Mons on their team to Z users. So you get 100 points, and you could upgrade basically any Pokemon on your team that could access Z moves. And how much the Pokemon costs is, of course, based on its tier. So you have the option of running anywhere from 1 to 3 Z Mons in your draft, which is kind of interesting dynamic to add, especially with Mega Pokemon being involved and stuff. So having up to 3 Z users is really, really cool. I think the way that it broke down was tier 1s cost 80 points to upgrade, tier 2 was 60, tier 3 was 50, tier 4 was 40, and tier 5 was 20. So depending on how you distributed those points, you could have you could just pick 1 Z user, or you could have anywhere up to 3 Z users, which makes things kind of interesting. And I kind of dig this idea, and I'm excited to see how it works throughout the season. But as far as Z moves that I wanted to use, I decided to go ahead and make my first Z user Landorus T, and I just felt like Landorus T was a very, very fitting Pokemon to give it to, because obviously, like I said before, it's a great offensive threat anyway, and then having access to like the ground Z move and the rock Z move is pretty devastating. But I think probably the best part about it is the flying Z move, because normally Landorus T doesn't really have a reliable stab flying type move that it can run. Fly is the best option, and it's kind of not ideal because being a 2-turn move, it's kind of easy to play around. But having access to Supersonic Sky Strike makes this thing an absolute monster, because now some of those Mons that kind of don't mind Landorus so much, some of those like bulky Pokemon, particularly like grass types and stuff that normally could kind of deal with Landorus, all right, have to fear that Fly MZ and that Supersonic Sky Strike, which is pretty devastating. So I just felt like Landorus was probably the most optimal Z user on the team, and could make the best use of it. So I went ahead and did that for 80 points, meaning I had 20 points left over. And I considered just keeping those 20 points for later in case I decided to, you know, trade my tier 5 off, because at this point I could only have a tier 5 Z user with the 20 points I had left. So I considered keeping them, but then I started looking at Armaldo, and I got to thinking, you know what? Armaldo might not be a bad Z move user because of the amount of coverage moves that it gets. I talked about all of those, like that pretty wide variety of moves that it got. Dark type, bug type. It actually gets superpower too. I forgot to mention superpower. So fighting type, rock type, ground type, poison type, and water type too. And then it actually gets Iron Tail, which normally I probably wouldn't run because it's pretty inaccurate. But you know, having access to the Steel Z move, that's pretty clutch too. So, and with Armaldo's solid attack stat, I feel like he could really potentially do some work with Z moves. So honestly, it just seemed like, you know, Armaldo with that coverage might be a pretty good Z user. Obviously it's pretty slow and not necessarily the bulkiest Mon in the world. Like, he can take some hits, but it can be worn down pretty darn easily. So we'll see what happens with that, but it just seemed like it wasn't a terrible option to do. So Landorus T and Armaldo are our Z move users. But anyway, that is going to wrap up our draft here, our team. I hope you guys enjoyed this draft recap, or this draft analysis, whatever you want to call it. If you did, remember to hit the like button down below, share your support for the Drizzlies. I'm excited about this team. I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's pretty well-rounded, and it should be interesting. I like that there are some familiar faces that I've used before, but also some new stuff to kind of mix it up, and I think that I'm going to be able to have a lot of fun with this team. So I don't know if we'll make any transactions throughout the seasons. I guess we'll see if there's any major holes that we need to patch up, but I'm happy with this team. I hope you guys like our team that we're going to be using this season. And we got this Sunday, I believe, is our week 1 match coming up. So definitely keep your eye out for that. So thank you guys so much for your support. Thanks for checking out the video. But for now, guys, I'm going to make it like an Abra and get out of here. So have yourselves a wonderful day. Stay cool. We will catch you guys later.